Thanks so much, Paul, and welcome to those who've just arrived. You found your seats. That's great. In fact, Paul referenced the EcoLeague program that his company sponsors, and we're going to be hearing a presentation of one of those innovative projects that some of the kids in, I think, are grade 7 are going to present to us later tonight. He also, of course, touched on the themes that are going to be explored tomorrow in our symposium. And it is called Educating for the 21st Century Green Economy. And that symposium was inspired by a concern for the future well-being of our country and our planet. It's become increasingly clear that unless we change the trajectory of economic development here in Canada and around the world, we will fundamentally undermine the possibility of a good life for future generations. Now, this warning comes not from a group of radical environmentalists, but from an august association comprising more than 30 of the largest corporations on the planet, the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, WBSCD, or CSD, excuse me, which includes several of the companies represented here tonight at our dinner, including 3M. WBCSD's recent publication is entitled Vision 2050, the New Agenda for Business, and it projects the consequences of a continuation to 2050 along the current path of business and economic development, what they call business as usual. According to their calculations, we would require approximately 2.3 additional planets Earth by 2050 to support current levels of resource and energy use and waste production, projected out for a global population that will almost certainly exceed 9 billion by 2050. So a continuation over the next 35 years of current business and economic practices is not close to being sustainable on this planet. And leading companies like 3M recognize that, and that's why they are so committed to finding different pathways to the future. Figuring out how to change course and move toward a more sustainable future, and the role education can play in helping effect this transition is right at the core of LSF's mission. So let me tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do. Maybe let you do that, because I can't, well, unless you can put up your yeah, okay. So first of all, our mission, I'll let you read that, promote through education, those things that will make it possible for us to reach a sustainable future. We were established as a Canadian charity in 1991. Interestingly, we were established by the National Roundtable on Environment and Economy, whose chair at the time was David Johnston, the current Governor General. Unlike the National Roundtable, who I always envied, I was a member of it later, about 10 years later, because I said, gee, you have a parliamentary bill and you have an annual appropriation, and we're set up with no funding whatsoever. We have to go out every year and raise funds to keep going, but we still exist. So that's a good thing. So working with business, government, school boards, universities, communities, education, youth groups across Canada, we act as a connector, a resource, and a facilitator for change. Our innovative programs and strategic partnerships are helping to reshape education policy, as Paul mentioned in his comments, and help students address the increasingly difficult economic, social, and environmental challenges of the 21st century. This learning is what is called Education for Sustainable Development. Our team, and you'll perhaps be rather amazed to hear this, our full-time employees now consist of 3 staff. Joanne is just joining us to make the 3rd. The heart of our organization is our president and CEO, Pam Schwartzberg, who's sitting right there, and our director of programming, who's Elaine Rubinoff, who's sitting at this table. And they are really our 2 full-time employees. We do have, however, about 30 consultants across the country, and we have an energetic and committed board of directors, 25 of whom are on the board, and many of them are here tonight. In fact, maybe I'll have the board stand at this point so you can identify board. Board members, please stand up. We do have a number of graduate and undergraduate students who join us, some of them on kinds of internships, some of them doing their graduate assistantships, and we have a new Service Canada intern who's about to join us. So we do supplement our permanent core. Yes, sorry. Oh, I have not met her. Congratulations, welcome. And Joanne is joining us, just finishing her undergraduate degree in the Faculty of Environmental Studies. And she will be joining us next week when the exam's over. Is that right? Yeah, great. Okay. So what is our secret to success? Well, how is this organization able to accomplish as much as it has? And if you want a quick overview, you have our annual report hot off the press on your table. But we have 4 priority areas. First, advancing education policy, standards and good practice. Second, reorienting teaching and learning. Third, fostering sustainable communities, so we link education to action in some of the projects that were mentioned earlier. And we support collaborative initiatives, networks, and champions. So on the first, advancing education policy, we look at education standards and good practice. We work with ministries across the country. We try and use an ESD lens to refocus education and learning. And some of you will have looked at a paper which I prepared at the request of Gerald Farthing, who just joined us, who's on our board and Deputy Minister of Education in Manitoba. And he said, the ministries across the country are talking about 21st century learning, but they aren't mentioning sustainability. Which is hard to believe, but that's the reality. So he said, could you write a paper looking at that topic through a sustainability lens? And that paper is also a bit of the inspiration for our symposium tomorrow. In terms of reorienting teaching and learning, we have a resource that is called Connecting the Dots, marvelous resource. One of the co-authors is Susan Elliott, who's here tonight, who's a teacher with a PhD in educational psychology, teaching at the French School. Is that correct, Susan? And she worked with our major curriculum consultant, Stan Kozak, to talk about the pedagogy of sustainability. How do you actually accomplish this? What do you teach in the classroom? How do you do this? And it's drawing on all the kinds of ideas about education. They're not necessarily new, and they're not necessarily limited to sustainability, but when you draw them together, it's a very powerful pedagogy for active learning that is inquiry-based, that draws on the passions of students. We'd like to see not 15% of the time devoted, but 100% of the time devoted to the passions and interests of students. That's how we get them engaged and keep them engaged. Place-based learning, citizenship, and so on. We also have a number of workshops that we conduct regularly all over the country. And those workshops introduce students to an online resource called Resources for Rethinking, absolutely marvelous a compendium of over 1,000, actually over 1,300 resources, about a third of them in French, that have been peer-reviewed by teachers, are connected to the curriculum in every jurisdiction throughout the country, and have been passed through a sustainability screen of 20 principles and evaluated in terms of those. We did a little demonstration of that for our board members, and even our board members have been around for a number of years. We're impressed and amazed at what a fantastic resource this is. If you know any teachers, make sure they hear about what they are. We also, moving on to our next topic of supporting students, we have, for example, a water docs resource that we've developed. Yeah, we'll move on to water docs. And Stan Gibson is here. We're collaborating with him on he's got a company or an organization called Ecologos. We give opportunities for students to take water projects and do hands-on interdisciplinary learning for grade 8 classes, and they've come up with a number of videos that are really quite remarkable. Some of these are on our website. Another project we're very proud of, and you're going to be hearing a little bit more about it, I think tomorrow, if not today, emerged from work we did with Deloitte a number of years ago on responsible citizenship. Those of you who have been around at these would know about that work we did. On responsible citizenship, we had roundtables across the country, and then one of our national symposia was on that topic. But we also brought together a group of youth to come up with what we thought, well, what we assumed was a great idea, namely to design a high school competition for a code of duties and responsibility as the flip side of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We thought, great idea. We brought them together for about 30 minutes. Very clear they didn't seem to be happy. We said, what's the problem? They said, well, we don't like competition idea. The competition doesn't really fit any of this. And a code sounds too legal, and duties and responsibilities, that's what our parents get. Okay, so you don't like the code, the competition, duties and responsibilities, but the rest is good, right? So what should we do? So they, within an hour, came up with a much better idea. They said, we need a call to action to youth across the country to articulate their vision of a more sustainable Canada and their action commitments to get us there. But it has to be map-based, and it has to show where these things come from. And the map has to be able to upload videos and pictures and text and whatever. And you have to have it coded so you can see whether it's primarily environmental or a social or a economic or a cultural kind of initiative. So that was great. We just didn't have any funding for it. But luckily, at our gala the next morning, where I said, we'll present it to our funders, and RBC came through immediately with some beginning funding, and has over the last 2 years renewed that funding. So we're very grateful. And our Canada project is marvelous, and we're now trying to connect it to the celebrations of the 150th anniversary of Confederation in 2017. We also support initiatives, networks, and champions. We have what we call the ESD Expert Council, which is a gathering of working groups which have been established in most of the provinces across the country, and other leading organizations, including the Regional Centers of Expertise, which our board member Chuck Hopkins has set up both here in Canada and internationally, and other leading figures in the education field. And we're very grateful for the support of the Canadian Council for UNESCO, which has helped us support that organization. And we have a representative of CC UNESCO here, Dominique Poffin. Dominique, welcome. Glad to have you here. We support bright spots. We try to identify. People always say, well, this is very difficult. How can we ever do it? Well, let's look at where it's actually happening. So Bellefontaine School is a school that has really adopted sustainability as a core principle for the entire school operation and all its courses and the way the school is run. So we try to highlight those bright spots. Finally, we've signed on to the Global Action Program, UN Global Action Program, which is a follow-on from the UN Decade on Education for Sustainable Development, which just ended at a conference in Japan in November. I was fortunate enough, again with CC UNESCO support, to attend that conference, and we continue to have outreach internationally, including some work we've done previously in the Dominican Republic, work we're doing this summer in New Caledonia, and I was invited by Gerald Farthing as chair of something called the UN Economic Commission for Europe ESD Steering Committee to attend their meetings in Geneva, which I'll be going to next month. So just a summary of some of our outreach. We've reached 275,000 Canadians through our programs, and we've engaged students in many projects. I think we have a slide on that, or do we? If not, there are some of the projects, and you'll be hearing more about that later. And I think I just wanted you to have a better sense of LSF, and I credit the success of the organization to our fantastic staff and our wonderful board of directors, as well as all those who've helped us across the country. So thank you very much. I think, is that it? Just pictures, just pictures. You'll be all in these pictures next year, so be prepared.